Hi, I'm Mike O'Donnell with New York Safety and Training, here with you for a few minutes about the Core 6 safety training for New York City. This is specifically for organizations, not-for-profit organizations, community organizations will often reach out to me. They have funding, they have grants, they're looking to do training for the community, training for their participants to help them find employment in the construction industry, and they're just not sure what classes are required, what classes are recommended, what should they invest in, all right? So our recommendation is the Core 6. I'm gonna go through 6 classes. I'm gonna give you the hierarchy in case you're not looking to book all 6, but how they interact with each other, which are the most important. Specifically, if you are in the market of trying to help your cohort, help your participants do job placement in the construction industry in New York City. All right, the Core 6 are, and I'll go through each of these individually, but you have your OSHA 30 construction class, 10-hour SST. These are the 2 most important. OSHA 30, 10-hour SST. 4-hour scaffold, 4-hour flagger, OSHA silica awareness, and then finally, FireGuard exam study prep. I'll go through each of these. To begin with, OSHA 30 construction. 30 as in 30 hours of training. That's why it's the OSHA 30. OSHA as in Occupational Safety and Health Administration. OSHA, part of the federal government, specifically the Department of Labor. OSHA is all about how to keep workers in the public sector safe and healthy. So OSHA, one of the ways they do that is they offer voluntary training, voluntary classes, one of which is the OSHA 30 construction class. So OSHA doesn't require anyone to take this OSHA 30 class. It is a voluntary class. It can only be taught by OSHA outreach trainers, which I am, which all of New York Safety and Training instructors are. The 30 hours of training can be no fewer than 4 days. OSHA caps the length of a day at 7.5 contact hours. We cannot legally go longer than that. Plus there are mandatory breaks. So most often an OSHA 30 class is run as 4 8.5-hour days, 7.5 hours of class plus mandatory breaks throughout the day. What should your cohort expect in an OSHA 30 class? This class is all about helping individuals develop awareness to recognize hazards at the job site, how to come up with strategies to avoid hazards, to keep themselves from being injured, also to help them develop a better attitude, to be able to really take ownership of their safety. So the class is really focused on that attitude and awareness and less so focused on 30 hours of trying to just cram a lot of knowledge and numbers and statistics. It's about 4 days of really trying to take a worker and make them safety oriented and less likely to be injured or to cause injury. Topics covered in the OSHA 30 are things such as workers' rights to a safe and healthful work environment, going through what they should expect safety-wise, and then smaller topics all throughout those 4 days about anything at the construction site, how to recognize the hazards and be safe, such as falls, electrocution, struck by objects, specific topics like excavation or ladder safety, tools, cranes. So the OSHA 30 is a lot of smaller topics. This class does not have a test. It might have some quizzes, which really students don't need to pass, but they're just good for learning, but there's no test. Somebody needs to attend all 30 hours, be awake, be participating, and they earn their OSHA 30. So it's about being present. It's not about studying for a big final exam. When a student completes the OSHA 30, they get an OSHA 30 card. No photo, just their name on it. It comes from an OSHA training institute, like a larger organization than anything you'll find here in New York. So when the instructor finishes the class, they submit the report, they order the cards from that OSHA OTI. It can take 2 to 4 weeks to come to us. We work with Megan and Annabelle out of Rutgers, the nearest OTI. I will say hands down, they are the fastest. So 2 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks, depending. But in the meantime, students will have a paper certificate that they completed their OSHA 30. Now I said OSHA doesn't require this class, so why am I telling you about it? While OSHA doesn't require the class, New York City does. 2017, Local Law 196 states that no worker can perform construction or demolition at a major job site in any of the 5 boroughs of our great city of New York without an SST card, Site Safety Training Card. How does one get an SST, Site Safety Training Card? 40 hours of training. Can you guess what 30 of those hours are? New York City took that voluntary federal OSHA 30 class and made it a mandatory New York City class. So 30 hours towards the 40 hours of your SST card is that OSHA 30. That's why I said that OSHA 30 is one of the most important. The other class, it's actually 2 smaller classes. We just combine them together. So 2 more classes you need to take to earn your to earn your SST card. 2-hour drug and alcohol awareness class, 8-hour fall prevention class, both New York City classes. These classes can only be taught by approved training providers under the Department of Buildings, which we are one. You can look on the DOB website and see all the approved training providers. So we are able to teach these New York City classes. 2-hour drug and alcohol awareness, specifically because, unfortunately, sometimes workers show up to the job site not sober, or they're at the job site and they smoke or they imbibe and they become not sober, and that's hazardous. That has caused accidents, that has caused death. So every worker in New York needs to spend 2 hours on drug and alcohol awareness. And then they need to spend 8 hours on the leading cause of fatality, falls. So 8-hour fall prevention. We take those 2 classes, the 2-hour, the 8-hour, we just smush them together. The industry just refers to that as your 10-hour SST. But beware, that 10-hour SST class doesn't get you an SST card. That 10-hour SST class combines with that big OSHA 30 class, 40 hours to get your SST card. The specific drug and alcohol 8-hour fall prevention, students get paper certificates. But when they have their OSHA 30, they have their drug and alcohol completed, they have their 8-hour fall prevention completed, we combine all those hours into a great website recently developed, Training Connect, that all training providers use. We input all of the training information, the courses they completed, biographical information, and we create a fancy SST photo ID card with really high-tech security. Unfortunately, the past few years, there's been a lot of fraud and counterfeit cards. So DOB really stepped up their game with these Training Connect SST cards. They're scannable, so the safety person at the job site can scan each worker and make sure they have their classes, where they took them, when they took them. So of the core 6, these 2 classes, absolutely mandatory. OSHA 30 construction, 10-hour SST. You will fail in your attempts to help your participants find work if they don't have an SST card. Bare minimum, must have an SST card to find work in construction in New York City. All right, those 40 hours. It's a 6-day class typically. OSHA 30 is 4 days, and then 2 days for that 10-hour SST class. We do run it in our Brooklyn and Bronx locations. We will run that 10-hour SST as just a marathon, super long day. But if we're hosting this class at a partner's organization at your location, most places don't want to keep their workers, keep their security there for an 11-hour day. We'll do it if students come to us. But if we're coming to you, most likely that SST is a 2-day class. So you're looking at 6 training days for that SST card, bare minimum. Now, there are organizations who want to equip their workers, equip their participants, their students with more than the bare minimum. So where would you go next? Because there are tons of different things you hear about. What is this? What is that? Our recommendation, the next 2, scaffold and then flagger. They're almost interchangeable, but I would prioritize scaffold. So what am I talking about? 4-hour supported scaffold user class, user and refresher. It's a New York City Department of Buildings class, just like the drug and alcohol and the 8-hour fall prevention. We can teach the scaffold class because, like I said, we are approved by the Department of Buildings. What is a scaffold? In case you don't know, I don't want to make any assumptions. If you're here in New York City, you see scaffold all the time. If you look at a building that's having renovation or construction, it's what's built around. It's that piping, that temporary piping that's around the side of a building. It is an elevated work platform. In New York City, we build up. But New Yorkers are not 40 feet tall. They need somewhere to stand when they're working at height. That's a scaffold. So it's a 4-hour safety class about how not to die on a scaffold or how not to kill somebody on a scaffold. Very focused on when you're working on a scaffold, how do you not fall off? How do you not get electrocuted? How do you not drop something and kill somebody? So it's a safety class with an exam at the end that everybody must pass. They have to take all 4 hours, pass the exam, and then the training provider, which would be us, we create a photo ID card, 4-hour supported scaffold user card. We do that at the end of the class if it's at our location. If we do it at your location, we'll likely do it the next day and then send them to you. In the meantime, they'll get a paper certificate. So students take this 4-hour scaffold class. Because New York City law, nobody is allowed to get onto one of those scaffolds. And you're going to be hard pressed to do any kind of work in New York City without getting onto a scaffold because we build up. So while the scaffold is not part of that SST absolute bare minimum, can't get a job without it, having that scaffold card will help your participants be much more marketable. Because really, you're not going to find many job sites in New York City where workers are not going onto scaffold. So they'll be ready for that. The other one, almost interchangeable, flagger. DOT, Department of Transportation, 4-hour flagger. What is a flagger? You know who this person is. You've seen them in the orange vest around the job site. Now I got props. Here we go. This is the flagger. Orange vest, doing the stop, slow, directing vehicular or pedestrian traffic around the job site. OSHA regulations state that nobody can perform those duties without safety training. New York City wants that safety training. New York City wants that safety training to specifically adhere to DOT standards. So it's a 4-hour DOT flagger class, all about how to direct traffic, but how not to be killed. Being a flagger can be very hazardous, so it is a safety class. At the end of that exam, students must pass, at the end of that class, students must pass 2 exams. There's a written exam, which everybody should do fine on as long as they're awake during class, and there's a practical, where the instructor will be a vehicle and have each student stand at the front of the class with that stop slow paddle and direct traffic and go through the hand motions and how to do it. So there's a practical and there's a written. Students who complete both of those, finish a 4-hour, they get a photo ID card from us for their 4-hour flagger class, okay? Those are the top 4. Very often, if that's your budget, those are the 4 classes you should be running. Nothing else takes priority over those 4 if you're looking to help your participants find work in the construction industry. Now, some of our partners, some of our not-for-profits have requested 2 other classes because what they're finding in doing job placement is they are running into some jobs who are requesting more than those 4. 2 other things they sometimes request: silica and fire guard. Okay, so silica and fire guard are 5 and 6 of the core 6. And then the final component of the core 6 is the fire guard. Specifically, Fire Department of New York, FDNY, F60 Fire Guard for Torch Operations Certificate of Fitness, CFF, Certificate of Fitness, which is not a certificate. It's not a piece of paper. It's a photo ID card. You and I would probably call it a license, but the fire department calls it a certificate of fitness. That's their lingo for what we would refer to as a license. So you need to have that certificate of fitness to do the job of a fire guard at a work site. So what is a fire guard? Anytime any worker is doing something that could cause a fire, like they're welding, torch operations, there is a worker whose job it is to stand nearby and watch them with a fire extinguisher accessible and with their phone, so that if things go south, they can call 911 before a fire, before it spreads. So that person, very important safety person, fire guard, who's there to fight the fire, control the fire, notify in case there's a fire, they can only do that if they have that fire department certificate of fitness, license to be a fire guard. So how does one earn that? They must do 3 things. They must pay $25 to take and pass a CBT, computer-based test, at 9 Metrotech Center in downtown Brooklyn, right near the Brooklyn Bridge, fire department. They've got to go there and sit through a computer-based test, and they have to bring with them a letter from their employer, or you, a community organization, a not-for-profit, a letter saying that you want them to become a fire guard. As long as they do those 3 things, pay the $25, pass the test, have that letter, they get their fire guard photo ID. Now, notice I didn't say anywhere in there, take a class. There is no mandatory fire guard class, but what some of our not-for-profit partners have found is they are scheduling their cohorts, scheduling their students who are going to 9 Metrotech and failing that test. Some pass, but a lot of the students are failing. So they will bring us out to teach a 3 to 4 hour study prep class. I have several retired New York City firefighters. I'm very lucky to work with them. They will go teach a class on preparing for that exam. And then our partners are very happy because they tell us after that exam, after that study class, the next day, their workers go and pass that exam and get their fire guard. One thing to be aware though, if you're a not-for-profit, if you're working with however your funding works, whatever grants you have, a lot of times that funding is written in such a way where you can only allocate it for certificate classes. You know this, for training where the student will earn a certificate. That's not our exam study prep class. They sit through 3 or 4 hours with Dave or with me getting ready for that exam, but they don't walk away with a piece of paper certificate. It's that exam the next day where they go to 9 Metrotech to get that certificate of fitness. So we do have some of our partners who can't bring us in to teach this class because the way their funding is written, so just be aware of that, all right? So that's the fire guard. That's the core 6 partners that we work with. And I keep referencing partners because we at New York Safety and Training are incredibly honored to help serve the safety training needs of our clients and our partners, but we don't do any job placement. So I'm not terribly knowledgeable, but a lot of my not-for-profit partners and clients are really on their game. And this is what they do. They do job placement. And they've come to me and they've said, these 6 classes has made their jobs easier. They get much more success rate in placing their participants, placing their clients in jobs. But they tell me it's very rare that any job site is going to ask for all 6 of these. Every job site needs the SST class. But then one job site might want silica, another job site might want the fire guard. So some of our clients just want to get all 6. It makes it easier for the job developers, job placement, to be working with clients, to be working with students who have all 6. And again, those 6 are the 2 absolute bare minimum, OSHA 30, 10-hour SST. To get that SST card, you're looking at 6 days of training. The next 2, not bare minimum. These are fantastic add-ons. 4-hour scaffold, 4-hour flagger. You're looking at 1 more day of training. So that 6th day becomes a 7-day training thing. If you've got the budget and you really want to set up your clients, set up your students to be totally marketable, you add an 8th day of training where we do the silica and the fire guard exam study prep. And then your 9th day is all of your cohort go to 9 Metrotech to pass that exam to get their fire guard, all right? So that's the core 6. That's how I would break it down. You have other questions like, what about HAZWOPER? No, nobody's hiring based on HAZWOPER. If you are looking to help community, help participants, and do job placement for them in construction, this is the core 6. That's my recommended breakdown. Anything else you hear? Some people might ask me, what about the OSHA 40? There's no such thing as the OSHA 40. That's just some people's shorthand for the SST, because it's OSHA 30 and 10 more hours. So some people call it the OSHA 40. That's not accurate. It's the SST, the OSHA 30 and the other hours. So New York Safety and Training would be absolutely honored to come to you to run these classes for you, or to help schedule them at our Sunset Park, Brooklyn location, or we have a South Bronx location as well. You can see more about us at our website, nysafetyandtraining.com. I'm very happy to hop on a Zoom with you if you want to have a further discussion about how to schedule this, how to do this, and why to pick us. Why pick NYST? We are not the only training organization out there. I would argue that we are the best for this. We work very well with underserved communities, with at-risk populations. We are very focused on trying to present the most positive and enriching learning environment to increase success rates. And we do have some strategies about making sure that students who start a class finish a class to really help boost our clients' retention and their numbers. So, all right, again, I'm Mike. I'd love to talk to you some more if you want to reach out, and I hope we get to work together. Thanks for watching this, and stay safe.